My Weirdest School, Book Number 4. Mrs. Meyer is on Fire. Written by Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pelot. Chapter 4. Stop, Drop, and Roll. We were sitting in Mr. Cooper's class the next day. He told us to turn to page 23 in our math books, and you'll never believe in 1,100 years what happened at that moment. Lights started flashing, sirens started screaming, and Mrs. Meyer came into the room. Mr. Cooper rolled his eyes. He put his math book down. To what do we owe the pleasure of your company today, Mrs. Meyer? He asked. I have a joke for you, said Mrs. Meyer. Oh, no, not another joke. What did the firefighter name her twin sons? She asked. I give up, said Ryan. I give up, said Michael. I give up, said Alexia. In case you were wondering, everybody was saying they give up. She named her first son Jose, said Mrs. Meyer, and she named her second son Hoseby. Get it? I didn't get it. Why would somebody name their son after a hose? Mrs. Meyer's jokes are terrible, but I pretended to laugh anyway because everybody else was laughing. Yesterday, we talked about preventing fires, said Mrs. Meyer. Today, I'd like to talk about what you should do if there is a fire in your house. Mrs. Meyer had lots of good advice. She told us that before opening a door, we should touch the doorknob and put our hand on the crack around the door. If you feel heat, there may be fire on the other side of the door. She also told us that if your room is on fire, you should stay low to the floor because smoke rises. The air you can breathe will be near the floor. She sure knew a lot about fire. Now let's say your clothes catch on fire and you don't have a fire extinguisher, said Mrs. Meyer. What should you do? Andrea was saying, ooh, 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 and waving her hand around like she was cleaning a big window with a rag. But Mrs. Meyer called on me instead, so na-na-na-boo-boo on Andrea. If your clothes catch on fire, I said, you should get new clothes. Everybody laughed, even though I didn't say anything funny. No, said Mrs. Meyer. I decided to guess again. If your clothes catch on fire, you should run, I said. Actually, that's the worst thing to do, said Mrs. Meyer. Running will fan the flames and make things worse. Andrea smiled, the smile she smiles whenever I get something wrong. Then she stuck her tongue out at me. Why can't a chuck full of flaming clothes fall on her head? If your clothes catch on fire, Mrs. Meyer told us, stop what you're doing. Drop to the ground. Cover your face with your hands and roll over and over again until the flames are out. That makes sense, said Mr. Cooper. Stop, drop, and roll, shouted Mrs. Meyer. Repeat after me. Stop, drop, and roll. Stop, drop, and roll, we all chanted. Stop, drop, and roll. That's right, said Mrs. Meyer. And let's say your bedroom is on fire and there's smoke everywhere. What do? Hide in your closet, I shouted. Actually, that's the worst place to go, said Mrs. Meyer. Andrea stuck her tongue out at me again. If your bedroom is on fire, said Mrs. Meyer, fall and crawl. Repeat after me. Fall and crawl. Fall and crawl. We all chanted. Fall and crawl. If there's a fire in your house, don't hide. Go outside, said Mrs. Meyer. Repeat after me. Don't hide. Go outside. Don't hide. Go outside, we all chanted. Don't hide. Go outside. Sheesh, Mrs. Meyer must really like chanting. Okay, now let's pretend there's a fire right here in this classroom, said Mrs. Meyer. You touched the door. It's really hot. You need to find another way out. What are you going to do? Stop, drop, and roll, shouted Neil the nude kid. Stop, drop, and roll. Fall and crawl, shouted Emily. Don't hide, go outside, shouted Alexia. That's right, said Mrs. Meyer. Go outside. Follow me, kids. And you'll never guess in 1,100,000 years what happened next. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. Mrs. Meyer jumped out the window. That's right, she jumped right out the window. We saw it with our own eyes. Well, duh, it would be hard to see it with somebody else's eyes. Mrs. Meyer sure is lucky that our classroom is on the first floor of the school. If it was on third floor, jumping out the window would have been a really dumb move. We were all too shocked to do anything. Mrs. Meyer was standing on the grass outside our classroom, waving for us to follow her. I'm not jumping out the window, said Andrea. Me neither, said Emily, who always agrees with everything Andrea says. Let's go, shouted Mrs. Meyer. Your classroom is on fire. There's smoke everywhere. What are you waiting for? Don't hide. Go outside. Then she started blowing a whistle. I looked at Michael. Michael looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Neil. Neil looked at Alexia. Alexia looked at Mr. Cooper. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. Mr. Cooper jumped out the window. Hurry up, Mr. Cooper shouted at us. The building is going up in flames. Quick, before it's too late. Go, 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 shouted Mrs. Meyer, blowing her whistle over and over. So we all jumped out the window, even Andrea and Emily. It was cool. Chapter 5, AJ the Human. We were sitting in class the next day, minding our own business. Mr. Cooper told us to open our math books. But then, suddenly, lights started flashing, sirens started screaming, and you'll never believe who ran into the door at that moment. Nobody. Why would you run into a door? That would hurt. I thought we went over that in Chapter 3. But you'll never believe who ran into the doorway. No, it wasn't Mrs. Meyer. Ha! You thought it was Mrs. Meyer, but it wasn't. So na boo boo on you. Actually, it wasn't a person who ran into the doorway. It was a bear, and the bear was wearing a hat and holding a shovel. Everybody started yelling and screaming, shrieking and hooting and hollering and hiding under their desks and generally freaking out. Eek! Went all the girls. There's a bear in the class, shouted Ryan. Help! Shouted Neil. Run for your lives! Actually, this wasn't the first time a bear came into our school. One time, my job was to be the door closer, but I forgot to close the door and a bear walked right into the gym. You should have been there. The point is, bears come into our school pretty frequently. Eek! Stop! Shouted the bear, holding its hand up. Wait, calm down. That was weird. Since when do bears talk? And since when do bears wear hats and carry shovels? Something tells me that is not a real bear, said Mr. Cooper. I think it might be Mrs. Meyer in a bear costume, said Ryan. It sounds just like her. Are you Mrs. Meyer? Andrea asked the bear. Meyer, said the bear. Never heard of her. My name is Woodsy the bear. Woodsy the bear? That's a weird name. It was obvious that Woodsy was a bear. He didn't need to have the last name Bear. That would be like me calling myself AJ the human. I'm here to teach you how to prevent forest fires, said Woodsy the bear. Everybody calm down. Woodsy said we should always build our campfires 15 feet away from tents, shrubs, trees, or branches that could catch on fire. Then he said to get rid of grass, twigs, and leaves in the area. He told us to circle the fire pit with rocks and to keep a bucket of water and a shovel nearby in case of emergency. Woodsy gave us lots of good advice about making a campfire in the woods. Then he told us that he had to go talk to the other classes. Wow, you sure know a lot about preventing forest fires, I told Woodsy. You probably know as much as Mrs. Meyer. Remember, Woodsy told me, only you can prevent forest fires. Only me? Wow, that's a lot of pressure. I started getting nervous. What about Ryan? I asked. Can't he prevent forest fires? Well, yes, Ryan too, said Woodsy the bear. I really must go visit the other classes now. How about Neil? I asked. Can Neil prevent forest fires? Yeah, said Woodsy the bear. I suppose Neil can also prevent forest fires. Look, I'm sorry, but I must go. And Michael? I asked. Can he prevent forest fires? Yeah, sure, anybody can, said Woodsy impatiently. Then why didn't you say so? I asked. It's just an expression, said Woodsy the bear. When I said only you can prevent forest fires, I meant everybody can prevent forest fires. That made no sense at all. If he meant everybody can prevent forest fires, he should have said that in the first place. It was like when Mrs. Meyer told us we should put smoke detectors on the floor when she really meant we should put them on the ceiling. People should say what they mean. What about aliens from other planets? I asked. Can they prevent forest fires? I'm out of here, Woodsy the bear said. Then he turned and left. Woodsy the bear is weird. Chapter 6. You're welcome. You know how your parents and teachers say you have to read a chapter of a book every night? Sometimes you just don't want to because reading books is hard, and then your mom or dad yells and screams and nags you about it, right? I know what it's like. My parents do that to me all the time. Don't you wish there was a really short chapter you could knock off in 5 minutes so you could go do fun stuff like play video games or watch TV? Well, your old pal AJ has the solution to your problem. And this is it, Chapter 6. That's right, you just read it. It's over. Done. Now you can tell your parents that you finished a chapter in a book today. So na 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 boo boo on them. You're welcome.